This is episode 85 of our road to Unicum, and today we review the Tier 8 French wheeled vehicle, the Lynx 6x6. I'm going to take a look at a pair of Tier 10 battles. First up is Prokhorovka, and then we'll look at Murovanka. I'm actually considering making a second video with this particular tank because there are so many different situations to talk about managing. I'll state first by saying I think most of the community is playing this tank incorrectly. As a matter of fact, you'll see a lot of sensational reviews about the French wheeled vehicles, especially the Tier 9 and Tier 10 on Prokhorovka, talking about how overpowered it is. And this map is actually the easiest map to play by far for this particular tank, especially if you just want to surf the horizontal ridge on the western side of the map. You can just kind of keep driving by back and forth over the ridge, just peeking your head up and over. And it's super easy to do, and it can be very effective if their team is particularly stupid, right? And you'll see later how I show that if a team allows you to surf the EF ridge repeatedly, and they allow you to, and they just stay there in the 3, 4, 5, and 6 lanes without using cover, they're pretty stupid, and that team is likely going to lose unless you've just been saddled with a really awful team. Now, as usual, I'm kind of moving back and forth here just in case, they're already going to fire at me, and that already takes a pretty darn good guess and, lands a pretty damaging shot on me. And I know as soon as I fire, I'm going to be spotted by that LTTB. I was not expecting him to YOLO me. Now, this does happen sometimes where I get people irrationally chasing me. Maybe it's because they know my name, they hate the auto tag, they've got XVM. Regardless, this LTTB, he should know better. I looked him up after the game. His stats are pretty solid. Sometimes I think people reason if they can take out a Super Unicum light tank player that maybe it's worth it. I don't think he should. I wouldn't have done what he did. He spotted me. He could have shot at me once, maybe twice, just backed up, because he actually would beat me in the vision game because, the base view range of this tank is very low. It's only 310, and he's got pretty good camo. Now, the main issue with our deployment, look at it, we have so many tanks down in the southwest corner of the map. The Batchat 12T is not in a terrible position. I'm not a huge fan of G1 only because he can't use his gun without being spotted. I'd rather be along the bushes that are along the 2 lane, along the road. But whatever, he's in an okay position. Really, like some of our tanks, like our 5120, shouldn't be within a square vertically of the Batchat 12T because he's a big bloated whale with a terrible turret in terms of protection, and he's likely to get shot at. So the main thing here is I'm here. Clearly, I'll outspot any of their heavies that try to poke their head up over the ridge because they've got no camo. And then this Camouflage, normally what he's doing would be immensely stupid. Right now, it's just somewhat stupid. Now, if we actually had tanks sitting in the middle of the map, more than just our Wizzy 132, this Camouflage would have already been dead, right? But of course, he's trying to push up. We've got not just the T-44, but also our Meal 2, who he should have been aware of because that guy was spotted previously. And I know our players are complaining about Artie, but the main thing is, I get followed around entire matches by Artie, and you'll see there's several times where they're pre-aiming my locations. You just got to play through it. You can't be in a place where it's easier for you to get spotted or you don't have Artie covered. Now, previously, our heavies were pushing up along the 0 line without going through a bush. Now the IS-3 is sitting behind a bush, which is good for him. I don't want to be too close to him because while a heavy may not spot him, certainly a light or medium that is looking at the bush on the other side of the hilltop has a pretty decent chance of spotting him. And that 261 is taking a very intelligent shot of where a sniper or where I might be. So what I'm realizing is if I stay here on this hilltop, I've been already fired at once completely intentionally. That was that first M53 hit, where he missed me by maybe 4 meters and took off, about half my health. And then the 261 who took a pretty smart blind fire. Okay, now you guys have got to watch this now. There are 3 Arties on each side, right? Watch their M53 who's been spotted. I'm pinging the map to try to make this obvious for everyone. That Artie goes and he stops at A6. Now he's been lit. There are 11 minutes left in the match, right? So 4 minutes in, watch how long that player stays alive, right? And I mention this because there's some really annoying generalizations that non-like tank drivers have. The biggest one is, oh, you need to spot even when I'm in positions that make sense, or you need to go spot their Artie. And it's actually, no, I don't need to go spot their Artie. We need to just spot things and kill things regardless of whether it's Artie or not. Now, for a tank like me with only 310 meters of view range, which is, although it's out to 392 with the setup that I have, I'll talk about that in a minute, but I would have to go in balls deep to have any chance of spotting their Artie. And I'm not going to get out just like our Wizzy 132. Our Wizzy 132 also bought a one-way ticket to the garage. He was playing relatively smart up to that point, decided to hop over the tracks, which in itself is not bad, but then he pursued north of the D lane, which, you know, when you're going to have 4 or 5 tanks only shooting you because that's all they can see, your chances of staying alive are pretty bad. And I know you may see, like I said, these sensationalized videos of people driving around in these French wheeled vehicles and, you know, being shot at and no one can hit them. If that's happening, honestly, your team sucks. That's really, it's an aiming issue, it's a skill issue. You'll see plenty of light tanks in this battle in the next one, and I'll talk about that. Now, the main thing you can notice here is, you know, I'm surfing that F-ridge. I didn't spot anything between the 1 and 4 lanes, right? So this is one of those situations where the enemy team are not idiots. Now, you know, if they were idiots, I'd be spotting things all along the 3, 4, and 5 lanes. The only visible tank that we've got right now is the Lore 40T. Our Progetto just got him lit. And so if our RDs are smart, they'll kill the the Lore 40T, because that is the only thing providing spotting for them in mid. Once that tank dies, we'll have a lot more map flexibility. I like our Progetto going right up to the bush and sitting right there. That's really smart. I'm going to go ahead and risk another run here. And again, my goal here is not so much to shoot at the Lorraine 40T. And certainly I could try doing the wheeled vehicle enhanced auto aim thing and firing, but mostly I'm just trying to get him lit and then maneuvering like crazy because, you know, as we've already seen, I've been targeted by Artie and they were making pretty good guesses, right? Better than average guesses at where I might be. Right, the Lord 40T is dead. Now that M41D had inadvisably poked up too high early. The problem where, okay, their M41D is now pushing up. He's in a, what I consider fairly useless spot. A light tank should never be pushing up on the east side of the tracks, near the tracks, unless it's late game and you're trying to spot a tank right on the other side of tracks. But now that the M41D is dead, I can push up beyond this set of bushes to their set of bushes and see if I can spot anything. Now, you know, obviously with the 310 meter base view range, which in my tank is 392 meters, I can't, you see the green circle? It doesn't even encompass where their Gorilla 15 is and where their M53 is. And their M53, by the way, has now been sitting in that exact same spot for 3 minutes, right? And we've got, you know, if you've been watching the chat, this is a particularly heavy amount. That already just fired at me. He was pre-aimed looking for me. The M48 spotted me because we were too close together. There was no intervening soft cover. But you know, it's been pretty funny reading the chat. I actually didn't really, I pay attention to it only if people are trying to communicate something helpful, because you know, people just complain to me about all number of things. I'm a cheater, I'm a hacker, I'm a Unicum jerk, I'm an otter, like who knows, right? But people are actually trying to calm something which is related in service of winning the battle, then I'll definitely talk to them. But there was so much salt in this battle, it was almost hysterically funny, including some of the things people were saying, like some of our RDs were getting mad at me for not spotting their RDs, and I'm like, if you guys are incapable at fire, it's now been almost 4 minutes that their M53 has been free firing, right? Okay. And their M53 just killed our Badger. Why? Because our 3 RDs are completely clueless. Now, there are some basic settings in the game that I recommend, 3 set of settings, and I'll put a link to those in the description of the video, but one of them is last spotted location. Super helpful, arguably the #1 thing. Second are these 3 concentric circles that I have on the map. The green is your view range, the white is the max spotting range, the yellow is max render range. Super important. And the last but not least, the hit log, which is in the bottom left of the map, which tracks my damage and spotting, but also tracks incoming damage, which will tell you what kind of shells your opposing tanks are firing at you. It's a super helpful bit of information. But why aren't I spotting the 1 and 2 lanes? Well, right now, this AMX, tier 9 heavy, had a lot of hit points, and he's pushing up too far in the hill, and I landed 2 shots on him. Our Artie also splashed him, so, you know, we've taken off somewhere in the neighborhood of about 600 of his hit points. Right, the other thing to keep in mind is their Gorilla was camping pretty far deep in the A lane, right? I could go and spot those tanks, but okay, the AMX just made a huge mistake. Why is he turning his head away from the direction of fire? He just gave me that shot. The guys that are on the hill can't shoot him unless they come up and over, which they are not. Our IS-3A is not going to do it. And the IS-3A pokes his head up and gets spotted, he's going to get hammered by the M48 Patton, possibly the Gorilla, depending where he is, and possibly all 3 of their Arties. Now, their M53 just killed another player, and our Kong GC finally counter-batteried him, which he didn't even need a counter-battery. He could have shot him, any of our 3 Arties could have shot that M53 any time in the last 5 minutes. If you wonder why I'm like overemphasizing this, it's because our Arties are just not paying attention. Just watch the minimap. It's so easy, especially in a tank like Artie where you don't actually have to drive. You just need to click on things. It's not hard to multitask. I mean, like having to drive like I'm driving and pay attention and think of firing lanes, where they might be, where the soft cover lanes, that's about an order of magnitude more complex than someone just sitting there playing arty potentially with one hand and smoking a cigarette or having a drink. Like really, arty is so easy, right? Okay, so we finally have map control. We've cleared out the western side of the map as far as we know. The main thing that I need, there are 3 points at which I can cross over the railroad tracks. There's north over by B6, there is mid over by E and F6, and then there's south over by J7. So the first obvious part is just to peek. And notice I don't YOLO over the hill. That's a common mistake, right? And it's a good thing that I don't, because I'm potentially one-shottable to that M48 Patton, and he is sufficiently agile that he can probably kill me before I run away, right? And even if I run away from him, keep in mind that, you know, I might get splashed by their arty or shot at by their AMX. There is something here that happens that I was not expecting, and this is good play on the part of the AMX. He actually comes to mid, right? And that makes sense. If he had stayed up on hill, that would have been a worthless position. Him going to mid was the right tactical thing to do. I had my full rear visible to him, so his shot sailed off to the side. It either hit my left or my right tire from the back. So this wasn't an issue of the side of my tank was exposed and shot my tire. He either rushed his shot or due to RNG his shot was poor. But either way, I could have easily died there. But, you know, granted, I had already lost over half of my hit points because of, you know, 2 reasonably good guesses by Artie. And so here I need to be careful. Now, if he looks at, like he's looking at me with specificity, then I know he spotted me. But heavies don't tend to have very good view range. For most of them don't equip optics because they tend to have such bad gun handling that you need rammer on heavies, single shot heavies, and definitely vertical stabilizers. In some cases, you either want to run like gunline driver vents, especially for things like this, not the Frenchies, but like the Soviet heavies have such awful gun handling. Now the AMX is doing something interesting. He's showing these going south. Now ideally, if he stayed mid, I would go south, peek over J7, shoot at him and drop back behind the tracks, or run up onto the top of hill and shoot down on him because there's tons of camo and vision. But because he was showing he was going to the south, I can't do that. And the problem is, I don't know if I can go mid right now either, because I don't know if the M48 is there or if the AMX was just pulling a fakie. What I could do is run down the western side of the tracks, north-south, just to proxy spot if their M48 or AMX are near the railroad tracks. The problem with that is I'll also give away my location and I have zero opportunity to fire at them. But thankfully, their M48 makes this decision for me. And it's really important, like, you know, it's interesting for me to watch. This is a real-time recording the actual battle, see how long it would take me to notice certain things. So I noticed the M48 on the map about a second and a half after he showed up on the mini-map. And granted, you know, I've just been reading the mini-map, trying to figure out how best to play this situation. But this is a big misstep on his part, partly because, you know, obviously he doesn't want to brawl a Type 4 heavy. He could try to flank him, but if he does that, I'm going to get shots on him. And moreover, our Conch GC, since he has nothing else to shoot at, is going to be highly motivated to shoot on that M48, right? And so, let's say that HE round tracked the M48, and then our Scorpion finishes them off. Okay, so our options are much wider now. But going back to my earlier point, you know, with the French wheeled vehicles, the Panhard, the AMD 178B, 178 Bravo, its tank curves has already started to flatten out toward the blue average performance line, right? Still slightly above it, but for the most part, the gains that people were seeing to their win rate have shrunk to 1% or less, 1 percentage point or less over their win rate. Now, by the way, here our Type 48, Type 4 has 2 different tactical options. He could sit in cap, as could our Scorpion G, right? People are, you know, maybe wondering why I didn't go to cap. And the main reason is I want to control my own destiny. If I go sit in cap, we could get blind shot. If their AMX, who's been playing it smart, the middle backhand half of this map, goes over to A6 and proxy spots us, that 261 is going to reset something. However, by going after the 261, because I know I can outspot him safely, and for that matter, I should outspot the AMX M4 as well, unless we're too close to him, we spot each other. All I need to do is stay alive. We have over a minute left. We've got 4 tanks. I was encouraging, our Scorpion was playing a little bit too snipey for a long time, but he's done the right thing by crossing over at J7, and now if he comes north toward the village and the Type 4 presses in from the south, we've got 3 guns to work on him plus our arty. Our arty, unfortunately, shot when he should have just waited, because his reloads basically, he can only fire like once a minute or something. He's not going to be able to use his gun for the remainder of this battle. He really shouldn't have done that. Notice I never YOLO'd in because I wanted to make sure to get in safe damage as I could, but just keep his attention busy, right? Looking at me so the Scorpion come up and like shoot him in the rear. Right. Okay. So going back to the French wheeled vehicles. Oh, and I do got to say, this is like one of the more well-rounded performances I've had in this tank. 2,900 damage, tops for. It's not just tops for my team, tops for the game look like 2,900 spotted, and the people who landed the meaningful damage on me, were those arties who made smart shots early, right? There are a ton of wheeled vehicles in this tier 10 Murovanka. It's going to be a great example of how to not play wheeled vehicles. The thing that I like to do on this map, regardless of side, is to go to the E7 ridge. The problem with this is that they have a triple platoon of light tanks, and I'm very concerned about getting, YOLO zerged, right? And so this Type 54 lightweight, he actually turns sideways, which gives me the penetrating shot with the high explosive round. Now, the high explosive round on this tank is good, has above average HE penetration, as is the case with the other French wheeled vehicles. It's one of the distinguishing features of the tank. I actually didn't have it loaded expecting to see the Type 54 lightweight. I loaded it in case I saw any one of their two platoon tanks, right? Just to hope to land some really early damage on them. And I'm still being careful here. Check out our EBR 75 FL Town. This is so common to see. Player will drive in like a chicken with its head cut off, thinking this is what they're supposed to do. And I understand for some people driving around like this is fun. I tend to think like killing things and winning games tends to be fun, and people usually say, oh, I was just having fun when they die stupidly. But anyway, our EBR basically threw away 950 of his hit points in order to damage like 450, so he only did a damage ratio of 0.5, and obviously if you just do the math, that would be a loss of like 15 to 7 every single game. Okay, so I've been spotted. I'm going to back up again. And the main thing is with light tank drivers is a lot of them, they don't use very wise approach lanes. And granted, these shots are missing, but it's fine. These cost me nothing except for ammo. I've never run out of ammo in this tank. And frankly, like even though the ammo capacity overall for this tank is something like 38, it's not that much. If you run out of shells, either something has gone horribly wrong with your entire team, or you've been wasteful with your ammo. But either way, one other thing I should mention too, before this particular battle, I actually ran out of HE. And I was only carrying 10 rounds and 28 rounds of the silver APCR. And so after this battle, I actually changed my loadout to be 26 APCR silver ammo and then 12 of the high explosive. And I found that to be, it's like the shoe fits. It's the right amount of balance. There's some people who like to run around spamming the high explosive, but it's really not consistent for penetrating unless you get, a shot on a large target area. You'll see me get some of those shots like on their Conway later. I get shots on the sides of his turret, which is just butter for high explosives. But tanks that are on the move or have large wheels, tracks, whatever, you can bounce shots. So here's an example right here. Good shot on that Batchat 12T. Didn't penetrate. At least the high explosive tracked him, which in essence got him killed. Now, the thing to remember, we've clawed this back to a 3-4 score. We were down by 3 tanks just a handful of seconds ago. And the thing is, like, you can't force things, like, especially in a bottom tier light tank. A lot of times what I find players do all the way up to blues, they overreact and panic too early, and they go in YOLOing trying to fix this situation. I'm not going to be able to fix this, the 3 tank deficit, on my own, and certainly not by blowing away my hit points and throwing them wastefully. Right, so they've killed the tanks that they could kill initially. This Batchat 12T is pushing up. I'm going to back up a little bit, get the first shot advantage because I'm sitting in the bush and he is not. All things being equal, that Batchat 12T will outspot me in every case, all things being equal in terms of how we're using camo, or we'll spot each other at the same time. I should never outspot him unless he's not leveraging camo or his approach line correctly. Right, and so the wheeled vehicles do have very, very good camouflage, but their view range sucks, right? And it's good that it's that way because it keeps them from being ridiculously overpowered. Going back, like right here, like obviously I'm gonna get spotted. We both spot each other, right? There's no camo between us. Even if I were behind a bush, he might not have spotted me. I probably would have. At this distance, it's too close. So going back to the tank curves, as I said, the AMD 178 Bravo, the tank curve has already come down quite a bit and is close to the regular blue curve. The tank curves for the Tier 7 EBR Hotchkiss and for this Lynx 6x6. Oh, notice, by the way, I was lit probably not by the Conway, but by that Lynx 6x6, and he's charging me. Let me get back to the tank curves in a second. Notice I'm running away from this guy. I don't want to exchange shot for shot. Why would I want to do that? Like, I'm expecting or have to assume that I'm a better player than he is. If we're just trading shot for shot, I'm relying on RNG to pull out that outcome. Like, that's a terrible idea, right? Like, why would I ever do that? I want to outplay that guy with brain smarts and high percentage shots. But going back to the tank curves, so with the tank curve for the EBR Hotchkiss is gradually slightly decreasing. I think players are generally seeing a win rate on the EBR Hotchkiss about 1 to 1.5%, somewhere around there, over the normal win rate. Then I think the same thing with the Lynx, it's something on that order too, or just under 2%. So these tanks are performing well, but if you go look at either the tank curves over time or the WN8 expected values, they're dropping over time. Why? As I said in the previous videos, new tanks that arrive or show up in the mid-tiers tend to be played by veteran players who have banked up the free experience to unlock and play them already. So it's not just like tier 1 tanks that any noob can play, right? You've people who've been at least in the game for a while, and while they may not be good, may at least have, let's say, some idea of how game mechanics work, like camo, and maybe some decent crews, etc. One person mentioned to me, hey, not everyone's going to have crews like this. 3 of the 4 crew members in this tank are fresh off the holiday event. So granted, the holiday event only comes around once a year. Someone who was watching for the French vehicles like I did could have made the exact same decision. And this is what I've been watching on this map. I've known that the Object 140 was in the town. Obviously, I don't want to rush him. He'll just smack me terribly and just brutalize me, right? But the second our heavies decided to leave the, E3 area and push onto the 140, which is exactly what they should have done, because now we have one mid-control. I went over to go help them. And now I'm being careful here. I'm trying. I don't know we know where their striv is, right? I don't know where the gorilla is. The important thing is I wasn't spotted after I fired. And so that tells us most likely the gorilla is in a position or in a ditch where he doesn't have physical line of sight to me, because he should have, or he's got his tank incorrectly equipped. Notice that their Lynx 6x6, which went too far down the A lane with low hit points, is also now dead. All of the other wheeled vehicles in this battle are dead. This happens all the time. And like I said, my gut feeling is as more and more players play these tanks, we're going to see their performances decrease. Now, does that mean that these tanks may not be a bit overtuned or a little bit too strong? Well, I think if you look at the tank curves, the tanks with the most abnormal tank curves by far, it's the EBR 90. So that's a lower profile version, relative to this tank with much better mobility. Right, and the funny thing is that the EBR 90 actually allows most players to drive light tanks the way they believe light tanks are supposed to be played, which is what I consider YOLO scouting, which is playing your tank like Kevin Costner did his character in Dances with Wolves in the beginning of the movie, where he rode out as a cavalryman out in front of the entire Confederate lines, kind of leaned back and said, "Shoot me," right? And just, I hope you, in what people are like, well, I hope you miss. But that's being reckless and stupid. Now, I was originally going to go head south to kind of try to spot this AMX-50B, because normally what a lot of players tend to do is they tend to keep pushing north, so I assume they're Conway and Emil too. But their T-44 made this decision easy for me, just as the M48 in that last game, which is I now know which tank we can pick off because he's isolated, right? And even if I get lit, I'm not at meaningful risk of getting shot, right? Especially with their 2 autoloaders on the other side of that hill. Now, we still don't know exactly where the gorilla is. It's been a long time since that time when I fired at the striv and didn't get spotted. And for all we know, I can't remember if it happened yet. I think, yeah, the striv shot someone who's near where our Object 257 is, which most likely means the striv is somewhere down on the K lane. So I need to be careful about getting spotted here, because if I'm spotted in the kind of flat dead zone, so that would be between J5 through K7, I may get shot at. But this is one of these cases where I will take a run at somebody because I was aware at the 50B, I had my turret pre-aimed because I knew exactly where he was, which means I'm going to have the first shot advantage, and I've got really good gun handling on the move. That's a time when I'll happily use the speed and rush in. And in the case of this Conway, he's tunnel visioning against that IS-7. You really should have been doing that. Our IS-7 is doing a fantastic job of pushing from west to east to pressure their tanks because he's got a meaningful armor profile. We actually went searching for the E3, the Emil 2, sorry. I thought he went all the way to the northern side of the map, so I went all the way up to A7, A8, and then came back around. It turns out he had somehow doubled back without me seeing him. We know where he is. There's no need for me to YOLO rush him yet. And part of the reason why I'm being careful is their Striv and the Gorilla have dangerous guns, and the Striv in particular has really good camo. And so what I'm waiting here, I don't want to lose any more hit points, and so I'm waiting for this IS-7 to push in. And then something happens here which I wasn't expecting, and maybe I'm just being a little too optimistic. but their EML 2 decides to ignore the IS-7 and come after me. So what I should have done is stayed up higher, looped around counterclockwise, never gone and faced that EML 2. So I gave up 366 hit points. It was a stupid decision, right? And as a light tank driver, you really can't afford to make too many of those, otherwise you'll be dropped into one-shot territory where I now am. Now, one of the most common complaints that I hear about the French wheel vehicles is they're too hard to hit. Certainly, if you've got difficulty leading shots, right, that's a hand-eye coordination issue. It also has to do with the shell velocity of the of the gun on the tank that you're driving. For the most part, like you can see, like a lot of the light tanks, the wheeled vehicles were kind of running around like crazy. They still lost their hit points, and they've all died a long time ago, where they can't really be meaningful in terms of affecting the outcomes. Now, here's another shot. See that? So that wasn't a leading enough shot. It was a good shot on my part, but not quite leading enough. But I didn't get lit, and so that most likely means if the Striv is in the K lane, he's behind this little ridge here, or too many trees where he didn't see me. But all this, you got to kind of try to take in as much of this as you can while you're playing in real time. Notice I'm not driving in a straight lane. I never slowed down when I fired on him. Started to wiggle, make it a little unpredictable. He was able to shoot me, right? So I find some of those generalizations about light tanks, oh, it's impossible to hit them. It's like, no, that's an exaggeration. Like, seriously, go look at the other wheeled vehicle drivers in this battle and the last one, or in the other videos that I'm going to make. By the way, our team thankfully listens to me. It would have been a mistake for our IS-7 to stop in the cap, because then he could have been camo sniped and reset. He pushed west, which was the right play to push pressure on their TDs, and to spot any of them that might be counter-spotting cap. So anyway, we won this, but I ended up getting like third in damage as a bottom tier light tank. Should that ever happen? No, probably not. Not if everyone's doing their job, but my ability to contribute, third in damage is a factor of my staying alive long enough to be relevant and keep my gun active, right? And you look at like I said, and I'm not trying to name or shame any of these other players, but if you look at what they did, the other wheeled vehicles in this battle, they were not meaningful in terms of contribution. And these are my stats. This is all 100% solo queue on these three tech tree French wheeled vehicles, and using 100% silver ammo. By the way, some players were really butthurt about me using premium consumables. I don't actually want to use food. I'd rather use an auto fire extinguisher. I do use a premium first aid kit because I prefer the passive buff that it gives, and it can fix multiple crew members. I understand some people don't appreciate that, but I think using premium consumables is nothing like using premium ammo. Premium ammo actually makes your target significantly weaker while leaving them stuck with all that armor to have to lug around, right? Not the same thing. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your feedback. Take care.